Igor Vovchanchyn looked like he was supposed to be like 6'6", but they cut his arms off here and put a fist there.
Yeah.
Like his forearms was so thick. Remember how thick that dude was?
Yeah.
He was so thick, and he would people up.
His legs, oak tree legs.
You remember Vanderlei. You remember Crow Cop. You probably even remember Sakuraba. But the most terrifying man to ever step into a Pride ring? You've probably forgotten him. 5'8", stocky, no tattoos, no trash talk, just raw violence. Igor Vovchanchyn wasn't flashy, and he didn't need to be. He just showed up and knocked everyone out. The guy was an ice-cold Ukrainian wrecking machine, racking up over 60 fights before most guys had even figured out how to cut weight properly. So how did the most feared heavyweight of his era vanish from MMA memory? And why do fans who do remember him speak of him like he was a myth?
Igor Vovchanchyn. Anybody? Igor Vovchanchyn? Fearsome heavyweight, incredible power, very small heavyweight, by the way. 5'7", 5'8", something like that, but just built like that. He was that wide. He was the first guy to do what became known as the Russian hook, which is this huge leaping overhand right, and he would throw them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like Fedor did. But he was smaller than Fedor. He was always small for a heavyweight, and just big physical heavyweights became too much for him at a certain point. The reason he retired is he started getting stress fractures in his hands. He couldn't hit anymore. But in his prime, my God, he was just absolutely fearsome. And he doesn't really get the respect these days that I thought he would get having watched him live.
Let's talk about the man who was once called too dangerous for the UFC, and somehow you forgot him. Now, you grow up in post-Soviet Ukraine, you're not dreaming of pro sports. You're trying not to freeze, starve, or get stomped in the street. That is the world Igor Vovchanchyn came from. No spotlight, no sponsors, just survival. As the Soviet Union collapsed, Kharkiv turned into chaos. Power cuts, food lines, crime on every corner. Fighting wasn't a sport for Igor, it was how you stayed out of a coffin. He trained in track and field, sure, ran the 100 meters, threw the discus, but his real calling came when he discovered boxing. No Olympic dreams, no national glory, just a young man who realized his fists were better than luck. At 22, he stumbled into something new, MMA. Except nobody called it that yet. It was no rules, or absolute fighting, or just don't die. No weight classes, no gloves, no mercy. And Igor had zero grappling. But he had power, the kind that made jaws unhinge and necks twist. People talk about punchers having heavy hands. Igor's hands felt like weapons that belonged in a museum behind glass. One sparring partner said it felt like getting hit by a crowbar. And that wasn't bravado. That was a Tuesday at Team Vovchanchyn. The chin was unbreakable. The lungs were unfazed, even with a cigarette dangling from his lips before training. And once he entered the ring, he didn't circle, he marched forward, always forward. From 1995 to 1998, he fought in Europe's underground fight circuit before it had names, rules, or weight divisions. And he didn't just win, he wrecked. In his first 41 fights, he knocked out 37 people. Now let that settle in. 37 knockouts. While you were still figuring out dial-up internet, this guy was taking out giants. There is even a story that he once fought a mob boss inside a Ukrainian prison. Was he an inmate? Nope. He just walked in to fight. True or not, people believed it because it fit. Igor wasn't just a fighter, he was already a myth. By 1998, Igor had racked up more fights than some fighters have punches. So when he landed in Japan for Pride 4, it wasn't a debut, it was an announcement. His opponent, Gary Goodridge, a Pride legend in his own right. Igor made quick work of him, finishing him with punches in 5 minutes and 58 seconds. Igor flatlined him with a right hand that made the arena gasp. Goodridge fell like a puppet with its strings cut. The Japanese fans didn't cheer, they stared. Pride's promoters knew immediately this wasn't just another Eastern European journeyman. This was their new executioner. They gave him a nickname, the Ukrainian Destroyer. No marketing fluff, it was accurate. Next, Pride 6. Igor won by a unanimous decision victory. Not a fluke, Igor beat him from pillar to post. Barreto zigged, Igor zagged, and Igor outpointed him the entire fight. Then came Mark Kerr, a two-time UFC champ, undefeated, world-class wrestler, the prototype of American dominance. And Igor hunted him like prey. Kerr took him down, controlled him, but couldn't break him. By round 2, Igor flipped the script. He sprawled, rose, and punished Kerr with brutal punches until he collapsed. It was ruled a no contest after the fact, but in real time, everyone watching knew what they saw. The king got cracked. His demolition of Francisco Bueno was particularly iconic, with Joe Rogan saying,
Who was that Brazilian guy that he knocked out cold?
Francisco Bueno.
Yeah.
Dude, that's probably still up there. Francisco Bueno.
Find that.
Look at that. Boom.
Oh my God. Show that again. Boom. Boom, boom. He hit him 3 times while he was out cold. It was ruthless. Igor was a monster.
And what Igor had, he was a kickboxer with power in his hands. He was vicious.
He was like 5'11" and 5'11" wide.
By 2001, Igor had stacked 13 straight wins across Pride and other promotions. Most didn't make it past the first round. His finish rate was over 90%. His fights averaged under 5 minutes. That's not fighting, that's demolition. And what made him terrifying? He never raised his voice, never hyped a fight, never played to the crowd. He just walked in, stared straight through you, and did the job. Mark Kerr said it best. One mistake, and you're waking up staring at the ceiling. Pride's commentators weren't poetic about him. They called him a machine. Because what else do you call something that hits like that and doesn't show emotion? Igor didn't intimidate you with words. He did it with silence and the knowledge that your next moment might be unconsciousness. Pride Grand Prix 2000 was the ultimate gauntlet. No weight classes, no soft matchups, one night, one crown. Igor entered at 220 pounds, surrounded by monsters. He wasn't supposed to win. He didn't care. First up, Gary Goodridge. Again. More prepared this time. Bigger, stronger, smarter. None of it mattered. Igor closed the distance, launched bombs, and forced the ref to save Gary from further damage. Next, Kazushi Sakuraba, the legend, the giant killer, the man who had just broken Royce Gracie. He came in after an hour-long war earlier that night. His corner stopped it after 1 round. Igor didn't have to finish him. His presence was enough. Then came the final, Mark Coleman. Rested, fresh, dangerous. Coleman had skipped his semifinal because his opponent pulled out due to injury on the other side of the bracket. Igor had already been through a war. Coleman took him down, controlled position, and landed knees from north-south. Illegal today, but they were legal then. Igor didn't quit, he didn't scream, he tapped when he couldn't move. Coleman won, Igor accepted it. Afterward, no excuses. He said simply he was better that night. And that sentence told you everything. He wasn't there to beg for sympathy, he was there to fight. And despite the loss, his run through that tournament shook the sport. A 5'8" striker with no wrestling background had just walked through 2 heavyweights and made the finals. No belt, no trophy, just respect. And the fear that he left behind in his opponents was worth more. Igor never feared a fight, but by 2001, fights started going longer. Younger opponents came in with smarter plans. They circled, clinched, wrestled. They didn't trade bombs, they neutralized them. Mario Sperry out-grappled him. Trey Taligman outpointed him.
What was your favorite fight?
My favorite fight would have to be Vovchanchyn because he was, at the time I fought him, he was #1 and undefeated, and I was like a 80-1 underdog.
That was a shocker. That was a shocker.
I was supposed to get my ass kicked. And I'll tell you a little funny story real quick. Before the fight, I was extremely confident. I had my trainers telling me that I was the better fighter. And then I get to the ring, and we go out to check the ring out a couple hours before the event. And I get out to the ring, and I was 36 years old at the time. And I go out and go to the rope, I'm warming up, and then Heath Herring comes in, jumps over the top rope, starts bouncing around, does an aerial cartwheel, and I'm like, wow. And a minute later, I forget his name from Holland, comes in, jumps over the top rope, bounces around, does a backflip. And when that happened, my heart sunk, and I thought, I'm too old for this shit. I mean, seriously, I thought, man, do I not have a grasp on reality? Am I kidding myself? And then we go backstage, I sit back there for 3 hours, my heart pumping, I'm nervous.
It was a shift, not a collapse, but a slow grind. For the first time in years, Igor didn't leave the ring with his hand raised. Not because he was outclassed, but because time caught up. The grind of over 60 fights began to surface. His reflexes dulled, his output slow. The wars had a cost, and you could see it, because after that the losses piled up. Alistair Overeem submitted him, Quentin Jackson slammed him into injury.
And I remember the first time I was scared when I had to fight Igor Vovchanchyn, and I gave him that note.
You cracked his ribs.
Yeah, I cracked his ribs, yeah.
Wait, what note?
I gave him a note before I fought him.
Wait, what?
I said, my mama said, don't knock me out.
Ah.
And he read it upside down. He's like,
Wait, is this a real story?
Can he speak English?
no.
He's Ukrainian, right?
And that's what relaxed me when I gave him the note and he actually tried to read it.
Yeah, because he's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy, yeah.
You could see the effort, but the body didn't follow.
Мое впечатление от боя не самое лучшее, сам виноват, что проиграл, допустил некоторые ошибки. Кто не проигрывает, тот не выигрывает.
Если ваш соперник после боя победил такой же, как и
Тренировался, но допустил ту же ошибку.
удушающий прием вам трудно.
Удушение, да.
Семья вода, что будет боя
Да.
Pride moved on. New stars, new stories. Igor kept showing up, but the violence that he once delivered now came at a higher cost. He never announced a retirement press conference. He didn't make a farewell speech. He just stopped. By 2006, he was gone from major events. No send-off, no parade. The fighter who once walked through giants slipped out the back quietly, dragging a damaged hand and a body full of reminders. Pride collapsed in 2007. The UFC scooped up the footage, the fighters, the spotlight. But Igor didn't come with it. No crossover fight, no UFC debut, no farewell tour. He just wasn't there. That absence sealed his fade from public memory. While others built post-Pride brands, Igor stayed silent. No podcasts, no documentaries, no Instagram highlights. English wasn't his language, and selling himself was never his style. He didn't seek interviews, and he didn't chase camera time. While legends like Sakuraba and Fedor became icons, Igor receded. Modern fans learned about Pride through the UFC's lens, and if you weren't in the octagon, you just didn't exist. His best moments? Buried on grainy DVDs in forgotten forums. Meanwhile, highlight reels prioritize fighters who embrace visibility. Even in GOAT debates, he's a footnote. When John Jones talks about his influences, Igor's name never comes up. The younger audience missed his era completely. And the MMA industry just never rushed to correct that. No Hall of Fame plaque, no special feature. A fighter with 41 knockouts across his career, 56 wins, and some of the most terrifying finishes ever, vanished from the mainstream record. Not because of failure, but because he didn't fit the new mold. He wasn't marketable, he was real. And for a sport that started in shadows but grew through promotion, that's all it took to erase him. The numbers don't lie. 56 wins, 10 losses, 1 no contest. 13 straight knockouts across Pride and beyond. Wins over Mark Kerr, Gary Goodridge, Enson Inoue. He fought in Pride's wild area. No real weight cuts, very few rules. Heavyweights were monsters. Igor was the one they feared. He made boxing work in MMA. His left hook didn't just land, it deleted people. Perfect timing, tight form, no wasted movement. Modern fans compare him to Francis Ngannou. Not because of size, but because of damage. One clean punch, that's all it took. He didn't pad his record, he earned every win. Tank Abbott once called him the scariest man alive. Don Fry said that Igor hit harder than he had ever faced. Ensign Inoue said that he didn't even remember getting hit, just woke up in the hospital with a shattered jaw and zero recollection. These are some of the biggest compliments you can receive as a fighter. Even now, fighters talk about Igor with caution in their voice. Yet what stood out most was his calm. No theatrics, no posing. He walked to the ring like a man heading to work. Clock in, crack skulls, go home. Modern fighters are discovering him in real time, and unlike some past legends, Igor's footage doesn't feel dated. His timing, shot placement, and aggression still look dangerous today. You can't teach his tempo. You can't train for that precision under chaos. And that prison rumor? It's back too. People debate it like it's folklore. Did he fight a mobster in a cell block? Well, it doesn't matter if it's real. The legend makes sense because he felt like someone who would. There's a reason people are posting, "How did we sleep on Igor?" The answer isn't just because pride folded. It's because Igor never tried to stay visible. He let the violence speak, and eventually the silence caught up. Now the clips are doing the talking for him. He didn't go viral with a microphone. He went viral with an overhand right. So where does he rank? Well, if you strip away the marketing, the belts, the brand deals, he sits right next to the best. He took out Kerr, Goodridge, Inoue, and barreled through one of the most dangerous tournaments ever created, all while being smaller than almost everyone he fought. He didn't campaign for greatness, but the resume doesn't lie. If you understand the fight game, you understand this. Power, composure, and violence in motion, that was Igor. And today, fans who never saw him live are calling him the one that got away. Igor Vovchanchyn didn't follow the MMA blueprint. He didn't move to the States. He didn't chase UFC fame. He didn't need to. While others chased cameras, he chased chaos. 41 knockouts across his career. Dozens of fights before athletic commissions even knew what to do with them. He didn't talk legacy. He built one by breaking men down. Pride FC was filled with killers, but Igor made killers look cautious. He wasn't marketable, he wasn't polished, he was real, and that is what made him terrifying. MMA has moved fast. New champions rise, old names fade. But fighters like Igor didn't disappear, they got rediscovered. Today his clips are climbing in views. His highlights are teaching new fans what raw power looked like before the sport got cleaned up. He never needed the lights, because when the bell rang, he just turned them off. You can measure fighters by belts, or you can measure them by silence in the arena after their punches land. Igor didn't chase the spotlight. He just made sure the lights went out.